When Johnny Nitro broke into the wrestling industry, very few expected him to become such a major part of the mid-card scene on SmackDown. He had some of the best athleticism in WWE, but detractors such as Kevin Dunn thought he was there for other reasons. This guy doesn't want to be a wrestler. He just wants to do all of the things that wrestlers do. Alright, I want to cook food and make great meals. This guy doesn't want to be a cook. He just wants to do all of the things that chefs do. And this is a guy who said he's a wrestling fan since he was young, but in life, if someone wants to tear you down, they'll find a way. This dummy boy failed to realize that Nitro was there for real reasons because the next season, he won Tough Enough. Nitro developed to become a seasoned tag team wrestler and eventually adjusted to the singles grind. What helped a lot was his repackaging to John Morrison. It was a Hollywood character who was delusional, and it sounds like his Eminem character, but it was deeper than that. He started using some notable quotes such as the Palace of Wisdom, and coupled with The Miz, the duo became the best tag team in WWE. For some reason though, Morrison was never able to break through. Some considered him to be the better talent in the tag team because of his wrestling skills and in-ring charisma. Morrison shined in SmackDown's mid-card scene as Intercontinental Champion and looked good for the most part. He had great matches with the likes of Rey Mysterio, Dolph Ziggler, and Chris Jericho, but there was a concrete ceiling for some reason, and with Morrison, it's very questionable. He doesn't have the best mic skills, of course, but everything else was aligned. And a big problem that's always mentioned is the mic skills, but then you have someone like Jack Swagger as World Champion. It's a pick and choose thing, and WWE obviously has their preferences. There's this rumor for years that he didn't do anything about Batista being with his girlfriend Melina and Vince losing respect for him because he didn't stand up to him. Do I think it's true? I don't know, because at the end of the day, this stuff happened in 2005 or 6 and he won multiple titles later on. Who knows? I know he had his issues as a wrestler, but I still believe he wasn't pushed to his true potential. Is he gonna be a 7-time world champion? I don't know about that, but I personally believe he could have been an upper mid-carder. And then again, the other wrestlers like Dolph Ziggler and Kofi Kingston had that same problem. 2010 and 2011 were standout years for John Morrison, but at this point, it felt like no matter what happened, a substantial push wasn't going to happen. He had a lot of good matches those years and shined even in the main event title matches he had. He was literally the best part of 2 of those title matches. But he saw how things were and left to develop a movie that would later become Boone, the Bounty Hunter. It sounds like a Tubi movie, but he worked on this movie for about 7 years and it was the main focus in his life at the time. On the side though, he continued to hone his wrestling skills and work harder on his characters. Johnny Mundo, Johnny Impact were all a more developed version of John Morrison. They were goofy and had that comedic aspect to them. He started using a lot of that parkour stuff in WWE, so it continued to follow him wherever he went. I think he did a great job of improving himself. In 2019 was a year where he was considered as one of the hottest free agents. This was Morrison coming off an impressive run in Lucha Underground. Lucha Underground is one of the strangest representations of professional wrestling, but it was also the place that showed Johnny Mundo at his very best. His feud with Rey Mysterio Jr. was standout stuff. Now, if I recall, in 2019, I thought he was going to sign with AEW and be the surprise partner in the 6-man tag team match main event. That never happened. Only a week before the first AEW Dynamite episode, Mundo signed with WWE again. They didn't reveal the news officially until December. They revealed his return on the WWE Bump Show. That alone tells you all you need to know. And on TV, he was already positioned as a side character in The Miz's story. After the Fiend Bray Wyatt dealt with The Miz, it caused him to show his true self and turn heel again. Morrison returned in a backstage segment teasing his partnership with The Miz. It felt very underwhelming, and this set the tone for his second run because it didn't happen in front of the fans, not to mention was a throwaway segment. Like, here, damn, you guys want John Morrison? Here he is. That's it. It could have been dragged out a bit to where he actually returns in front of a crowd to help his friend. I don't think it's a problem he teamed up with The Miz again. It's just how he felt in the partnership. And I'll get to that later, I'm gonna get to that soon. Compared to his first tag team run with The Miz, he was way more comedic and a bit of a lesser equal than he was previously. But I'm sure he wanted more of that comedy aspect, especially if you see how he was as Johnny Mundo. The crowd was dead for his first segment, but his talent in the ring helped a lot to give people a reason to watch him. And Miz and Morrison were entertaining before the COVID stuff. They were more seasoned and brought something big to the tag team division. Yeah, Morrison was the number 2 in the team, but it felt like from my perspective, they were gonna make him a good single star. I was actually optimistic at the time that John Morrison would become a notable single star in WWE. I wasn't expecting him to become the world champion, but I did expect like an IC title reign, a US championship, just him being around in the mid-card. He did shine early on. Great performance in the WrestleMania ladder match to win his team the match, and at that time, The Miz and Morrison were the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. which is good. And yeah, he was goofy, but it was clear that he was having fun. At one point, they even made them challenge for the Universal Championship. Some of us all had that small hope that maybe he'd win, but it wasn't gonna happen. After the summer though, he began to look more like Miz's lackey. He was getting his ass beat constantly with no end in sight. He was looking like an idiot, on screen, backstage, wherever. Miz became only the second person to win the Money in the Bank from a wrestler. Now, there's a reason why I mention this, because there was a point, I don't think he won a singles match in months. Well, Miz was actually starting to develop more and become eventually the WWE champion again. It's a weird thing because Morrison was on TV every week doing something. He was guaranteed to be on TV like Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton were, but he was jobbing all the time. My personal problem with him at the time is not really the fact that he loses so often, but how his performances weren't showcased properly. He had a great talent, but it was suppressed, and if you knew nothing, you'd think this guy wasn't good. It was becoming more clear that Morrison wasn't gonna get a great chance. He was in a position similar to Shelton Benjamin where he had his push in the past. Morrison almost never won singles matches, not to mention didn't have much time to show what he's capable of. On the other side, he did get to feature in a marquee match at WrestleMania against Bad Bunny and Damian Priest, so there's that. And it was a good match. The heels made Bad Bunny look great, and it was one of the better celebrity matches you'd see, especially because of the fact that Bad Bunny wasn't an athlete like Pat McAfee or someone else. He was just a regular guy, and he trained well and had a solid performance here. They lost, of course. Morrison added more to his character with the whole moist thing after WrestleMania. It worked well for him, and WWE finally started to do more with him. He got a small push that resulted in some of his best matches on the main roster. Ricochet was a great opponent for him. I don't know what it is with Ricochet at the time with the jeans, but for some reason it made him look like a demon. They had a tremendous false count anywhere match on Raw once, where they were going back and forth with crazy spots. Ricochet was doing the crazier spots though, I'm not gonna lie watching it here. But it was very good stuff, and probably the best Morrison match since his return. Morrison also had a great showing in the Money in the Bank match, which some people actually thought he would win, which, again, a lot of us really thought things were gonna look different for him. Our perception of John Morrison when he signed to WWE was much different than what WWE probably intended for him. Then it looked like things were moving up for him because The Miz turned on him. Now, there's a reason why this is good. This was supposed to be the key to Morrison's singles push, but then something huge happened. So, Morrison is obviously The Miz's best partner he's ever had, right? Well, instead of making a feud out of it, Miz ended up disappearing a week later for Dancing with the Stars, and Morrison was left to become a face who was still dumb, not to mention was losing all the time. And literally the next week, he kind of made it seem like Miz slapped him or something. He wasn't really that pissed. He got jobbed out to Omos, just messing around and whatnot, and Miz didn't return. By the time Miz came back, Morrison was done. Morrison was released from his WWE contract, and they didn't continue the feud. This is unfortunate because at the end of the day, I thought John Morrison was a very good talent for WWE. He could have been a good asset in the mid-card scene. Like, yeah, they weren't going to push him to main event, nor were they even going to give him a chance to get to it. But he could have been a mid-carder even in this era with the age that he was. You know, like if Damian Priest could be a US champion, why can't Morrison be competing for it? I never personally understood it because it kind of makes you overlook everything he did to get back to WWE. It's like, oh, we don't really care about any of this. You're here just to be a chapter in Miz's career. Because that's what it looks like. The moment they split up, they literally released him. They didn't even have the feud because Miz disappeared. And this was back when WWE used to have storylines and release the set talent later on. I hated that back then in 2021 because it did not give you a reason to invest in the talent unless their name was Roman Reigns. I hated it. Again, I gotta mention this. Our perception of him when he signed is very different probably to WWE's. We're like, oh, he's going to become a mid-card champion, he's going to get pushed, maybe he'll go even higher. They would probably laugh at that thought because their intention was to make him Miz's partner once again, and that's it. Because if they were going to do anything else with him, they would have. They would have done something with him, but it was not the case. He had good matches here, but he kept on losing a lot. He was developing some of his character. He was a much seasoned character than he was previously, but it just didn't work. It is unfortunate, you know, at the end of the day, John Morrison's second WWE run should have gone down a little bit more notably than it did. Again, I'm not saying world champion, you know, like I kind of wish he was world champion, but at least the IC title or the US championship, at least have him compete for those, because he could have been a nice name to add to the mid-card scene like Jeff Hardy was at the time. So I thought it was a bit unfortunate, so yeah. Alright, what you guys think of John Morrison's second WWE run? Please comment down below, and that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the Moonlight Drive on the like button, and perhaps the Starship Pain on the subscribe button. Peace, I'm out.